Welcome to the Venus and Mars Show, and we are, as always, so happy to have you here with us. I'm Peter, or Mars.
And I'm Ann, Venus.
In this segment, we will be talking about age discrimination and how pervasive is it, and should we all be concerned?
We also have our special guest today, William Fleming, a retired lieutenant from the MBTA Police, an author who will talk to us about his career and his book.
And as always, we wrap up with a special community acknowledgement. Age discrimination. So, what do you think about it? Does it really exist?
I think so.
Yeah? Well, if it does, you and I are a little north of that.
Speak for yourself, okay?
Well, if age discrimination truly exists, which I actually believe it does, I've witnessed it in my own workplace, it's kind of unique in its own way in that it doesn't matter if you're female or male. It doesn't rely on gender. It doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim or Catholic or atheist. It's the one thing we all share in common eventually if we're lucky enough to live that long. Mm-hmm. If you're lucky enough to live that long, we all will share that. So we should all be concerned about how we're treated. Because most people I know that are 50 and over aren't ready to retire yet. In fact, a lot of
aren't ready, probably can't.
Yeah, well, not only that, we're the first generation to really have to not only really pay for our kids' colleges or help out, but we also have to help out with our parents and fund our own retirement, all three at once.
Good luck to us.
So that brings us to why are we being discriminated against?
I can take a guess. Corporate America doesn't want to pay.
That's part of it. There is also, I believe, a perception of that older somehow is a liability. But I would like to talk about a little bit why I think that, in defense of us, why older is good, is a good thing.
I've got a couple of things to add that would be good too.
Well, why not you start off?
Well, one of the things that I know that I see in that age group is people who are already trained to get up and go to work. They're there on time. They put in their full day, if not even a little bit more, if they have that ethic already built into them. I don't really see that training in the younger generation yet. Not to say that they won't have it later, but it's something that I feel we bring to the table.
Well, yeah, and not part and parcel of that, but a lot of employers will kind of look at somebody, and they can't say these things, but they say, well, where are they going to be in 10 years? They're 55. Where are they going to be in 10 years? Well, in today's climate, there really isn't, for lack of a better word, loyalty either way.
Oh, no.
So do they think that a young college graduate is going to stay from, say, 25 to 35?
A young college graduate is going to probably use that as a stepping stone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is it's probably more unlikely that the older worker, because of the pressures that are on them, is going to leave if they like the situation. So I don't buy that argument about, 10 years is a lifetime in business. It's a long time. It's a 10th of a century.
It is a long time.
The other thing is health perceptions. I have great health. I'm in my mid-50s. They can't ask me for my health, but I'd be happy to give you my health records because I think that I'm going to be in just as good a health, if not better, than some of these 25 or 35-year-olds.
I get what you're saying, but as a corporate standpoint, when they're looking at it, they're looking at the company as a whole. So unfortunately, if someone in that company has cancer and is using up all the health care money,
sure,
it shares that responsibility,
well,
kind of like minutes on a phone plan.
What they call adverse selection. You can't
Yes.
have a bunch of, everybody's over 55. I mean, the insurance would be, I understand that. But the point is that you can't stereotype or rubber stamp any group that everybody's in bad health or everybody's this way or that way.
But wait a minute, it kind of, the whole generational thing. You just said how most of it is falling down on our shoulders about taking care of elderly parents, taking care of the kids with the college and all of this. It's falling on us, the healthy ones, to take care of all of the rest of it too. So it's the same thing that pertains.
Who's going to take
the
care of
board.
us?
No, well,
Us?
has anyone done it yet?
All right, how about this? McDonald's has a prototype that I read about that they have a employee-less store. So let's take that to the
Employee-less?
store. You go in the store, there's nobody that works there, but you still buy products there. You sit down, you eat.
There's no
whatever.
human.
There's no human there. They're working on that. Now I'm going to speed this up because it does have some merit to what I'm trying to say. Robots, supposedly, there was in Europe, they were saying that in Britain alone, I think it was 7 million jobs that could be lost if they had introduced robots into, say, retail stores.
Oh, boy.
I'm not kidding. A 3-foot robot will come up to you and say, "Can I help you?"
Oh.
And by the way, you don't need 50, 60 of them either, and they don't pay. So,
Oh, and you're also gonna get there
the
with a
reason why I'm
driverless
getting
car.
at this is that you're going to have even more people not working. Okay, jobs are going away. Forget it, even 50 plus being discriminated. Why don't we simply lower the retirement age then? Why not?
The money is Social
I
Security
don't
is
wanna
just
hear
not
it.
there.
But
They won't, the government won't give it to us.
Well, somebody's going to have to pay for it.
And you know, I'd be all for that in a
Right.
way, because it would kind of move us out of the way and let the next
Yeah.
generation, who's very, very techie, very, very knowledgeable about the way the future's going to go, to take that job over.
Well, I really think that something eventually has got to give, because you're going to either have a gigantic welfare system. I'm talking about eventually. Well, what are you going to do?
But we have that already.
Yeah, but I'm talking about people, a lot of
I
people
know.
that want to work and can't work because they're getting discriminated against.
I don't even, I'm speechless right now.
Well, then you have less buyers, number one.
The money
It
just isn't
does-
going to flow.
Right. No, there's a very serious crisis I think we
Side
face.
effect to all
And
of
even
this.
though people over 50 can get jobs, I would suggest to them that if you do get laid off or lose your job, expect to get a job at less of a pay that you used to get. It's
Oh, absolutely.
It's tough out there.
But that was the whole reason of letting you go, the age discrimination to begin with.
Yeah, well, we bring a lot of things to the table, like you were starting to allude to. You know, things like punctuality, not expecting to race to the top within 2 years. You know, you give it some patience.
I still
even
have
the way,
loyalty.
even the respect I see between generations is not there when it used to always be there. When I started in the industry, whether the guy was a partner for a law firm or he was a janitor, if he was 30 years older than me, he got Mr. treatment from me.
Absolutely.
So, I think, though, like a lot of things, this is sort of one of those things that people can get away with it. They dance around. They don't say, "We're not hiring you because you're old," but they get a way to get around this.
The loopholes.
Right, there's a loop.
Legal.
But I think in the future they'll look back and say they had this rich resource of employees to pick from right under the nose from the very beginning, and it was a waste of time trying to circumvent them in the first place. In other words, it's going to cost them more in the long run to try to hire around them cheaper and all that when you don't have all the other qualities that we talked about. When these other people. Now that doesn't mean that everybody young, by the way. I've met some really sharp young people. I'm not stereotyping or blanket them and
But
blocking
it's a
them.
salt and pepper. You gotta
Yeah,
have a
like
little
your
of this,
hair?
have that. No, you must be looking in the mirror because there's nothing salt and pepper about this. I'm not your age, remember?
Well, anyway, that's all I know is that's something that I'm going to have to maybe deal with sometime in the future. That's all.
Yeah, unfortunately for you, yeah.
Yeah, well.
Sorry.
All right. Well, that does it for age discrimination tonight.
Yeah, it does.
Do you feel discriminated against?
No?
You know, as we said, this is one area of discrimination which doesn't discriminate. Where all of us over 50 or over, we all share regardless of all other demographics, getting
Yes.
older.
And not to tap into all of that experience, especially where today, 50 plus, is not like it was a generation
No.
ago with better health, et cetera.
Exactly. Something to watch out for the future for sure, as the population of 50 is going to even grow more. Okay. When we come back, we'll hear from William Fleming, who will share with us his policing career and his book.
Hi, everyone. I want you to welcome Bill Fleming, William Fleming, retired lieutenant from the MBTA Police, and also an author.
Bill,
Thanks for coming.
welcome to our show. Thank you for
No,
coming.
thank you very much. And I have a confession to make. Ann and your co-host Maz here, we go back a long way. We originally part of a group,
It's
OFD, originally from Dorchester.
Okay, oh, so you grew up in Dorchester?
Yes, but now
Correct.
we're members of CAD, which is Can't Afford Dorchester.
It's true.
Yeah,
Yes.
my mother grew up in Dorchester, and father grew up in South
Yeah.
Boston, and then they moved out in the 50s. And then, of course, Dorchester's come back up. So-
Dorchester has exploded. Ann used to hang out in her younger days. Is now going to be the wineries down there. My daughter just got married down there, the Venezia restaurant, the hotels. The Vietnamese have done an unbelievable job in
In the
turning
neighborhood.
Restaurant Row into Fields Corner, and Dorchester is on its way back, which is great. And the mayor, Marty Walsh, has done a great job in the city.
Don't you believe they're targeting all of the waterways, though, along the water and along the coast? It seems to be the big deal. I mean, years ago, let's face it, the port, of all places, would be considered the low income.
Well, you have to
Sad.
remember, I think it was back in those days, it was polluted. We
correct,
had
because they had the acid waste down
we
there.
had polluted the whole Atlantic Ocean. But I think it was thanks to the judge. It wasn't. It was. I'm not sure if it was not the Garrity from Boston days, but the other Judge Garrity had passed, and because of the work of the Water Resources Authorities, though, right now South Boston, the water is probably cleaner than down the Cape. And that's why it attracts so many young people over there.
Yeah, it's really boomed. But the amount of building, too, it's one on top of the other. There's not single-family homes going up. It's more apartments and condominiums that I see.
Well, Dorchester was 3 deckers, so it was always one. Now they
I
just
miss
call them
those days.
condos. They
We
call them
jump from roof
condos.
to roof.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to you, Billy, I want to talk a little bit about your career. So how did you start out in the MBTA? Like, what was that like? Were you an officer?
Well, I'll start off by saying my career, I've had some violent incidents. I was shot. I was had a bottle smashed across my face. I was hit with rocks. I was in several fights, and then I became a cop. And after I became a cop, I was very safe. Those other things all happened before
So
I
you were
was a
shot
cop.
before you were a police
Yes.
officer?
So wait a minute. When all these violent acts happened to you, you were in what position?
Well, when I was shot, I was a parking lot attendant over at Charles River Park. I was working my way through
Attendant,
college.
okay.
Yeah, and I
He
got
was gaining his experience.
The
with
guy stuck a
law
gun in my
enforcement.
face and told me, give me all the money I shot, and I told him where to go, and he ended up, nice guy, I have to thank him for it, because he had it pointed at my head and he shot me in the
Oh, my
leg.
Lord.
So I was always appreciative of it.
But then,
Yeah,
did
I
you ever
know.
have anything like that happen to you when you were in law enforcement?
I've had guns, drawn on, in certain incidents. I always remember one incident that was in how times change. Years ago, we got a report, a group of young kids on a train with firearms, and I was going down with a new officer, and he had drawn his gun, and I said, don't put your gun away, because you don't want to scare people. We'll just take these calls come in all the time. And I got on the train, and I said, group of kids, young kids there, and I said, okay, which one of you's got a gun? And the kid goes, you mean this one? He stuck it right in my chest. So I turned to the other kids and never pay attention to another word I say.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, but it turned out it was a replica handgun which kids carry today. So I was, that was just the way it is.
Yeah.
But as far as the law enforcement career, before I was in law enforcement, I was a social worker. I worked with sexually abused kids.
Oh, my God.
And for a couple of years. Then I also worked at the L Street, the Curley Recreation Center, as a women's exercise instructor, which was probably the best job I ever had.
Well, I
Oh.
think I
Yeah.
understand
I was going to say,
why.
God bless you for
Yeah.
all you do, but
Yeah, but
that was probably a fun part of your job.
Yeah.
So.
I became in law
Probably was tough on
enforcement.
the eyes, right?
Metro DA in Florida came up and gave a test up in Boston. I went down there with Charlie Burns, who was a Boston police officer, who was later shot 3 times up here in Boston. And my other friend, Mark DeLuca, we went down together. Now, Mark was the chief of the Duxbury and Cohasset police, and he was in a horrific motorcycle accident, and he's right now is paralyzed, and nobody else would have made it through, but Mark's one of the toughest guys I know, and he's made it through, and his son is Bazooka DeLuca, one of the best middleweight fighters, and I predict to be the middleweight champion of the world in
Now, there
another
are
year.
benefits that go on for him, too, aren't there?
Yes, and it
Yes,
really,
because I
you know,
continually see his name
Yeah.
coming up for events.
great family, great man.
Now, so you started out as an officer, you went to K-9?
I was in Ian brought up the story. I was a K-9 officer. We lived on the same street in Dorchester in Costello
Well,
Place.
you've had a lot of different jobs here.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
All within
But
that
one of my
agency.
favorite stories about being a K-9 officer, I used to walk the dog with my kids behind Florian Hall. And one day the dog just started digging like crazy. He's digging, and I got mad at it. Cracked the dog. Couldn't crack the dog today, but I cracked the dog back then.
Really? You can't touch them today?
Well,
like
you'd be in for
Oh.
animal cruelty. Yeah, and my
Or
kids were
striking a
there, and he
police
rolled
officer.
over, and he was in the mud, and I went home to my wife, and I was like talking to myself. Well, about 10 years later, 15 years later, we were watching as they're taking the bodies out from behind Florian Hall that the Bulger and Weeks and that crew had buried. And my son was eating popcorn. He was older now. He just turned to me and said, "Should have listened to the dog."
True story.
But he was a great, probably the best partner I ever had.
Well, that partner also, talk about the money, the bank robbery.
Oh, which you're talking about Papagino's, or you talking about?
Yes, with Elizabeth.
Oh, I came home one night from work, and the Boston police were on my street searching for. Papagino's was adjacent to the street we lived on, and gunmen had robbed Papagino's, and they climbed over the fence and took off. And I said, "Do you need the dog?" And we were all set. And they said, "No, we're all set." Well, the next day, my 6-year-old daughter comes in the house with 2 pails of money. And she said, the bad guys robbed Papagino's, but she goes, "I got all the money." Now, being the good
It's a
father I
great
was, I had
story.
this decision to make.
And
Whether
being
to
in law
return the
enforcement.
money
Or
and
go
be
on
in law
vacation.
enforcement, or to save the money for her wedding.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, I'm happy to say I saved the money for her wedding, and I put it away.
So more devils were on the shoulder than
Yes,
angels.
yes.
Well,
Yeah.
finders keepers, she
Yeah.
was a 6-year-old, right?
Yes.
Isn't
Congrats.
possession 9/10 of the law there?
Yep. I was deputy chief in charge of investigations. I was a sergeant in detectives. I was in charge of an area, patrol area. I served as the interim chief. I also, after 9/11, I served on the original terrorism task force.
So you've had this myriad of careers, and now you're moving into, or you have written a book, and you're on your second book?
Yes.
So-
Well, what happened with the...
Did you draw from all these careers to?
Yes. Then one of the things that people always ask, how'd you get started in writing? Well, cancer started me in writing. I developed prostate cancer, and I was out of work for several months. And of course, my wife wanted me, was driving me crazy, and because you're supposed to get up and walk around. But I started writing that, and in collaboration with a friend of mine, we wrote this novel, Code Black, which is about the MBTA, the history of the MBTA police, who I refer to as the O police, and I'll explain that in a minute. And it's about a terrorist attack on St. Patrick's Day in South Boston. For the past 25 years, I worked the St. Patrick's Day Parade, and I was assigned to Broadway Station. And one of the things that people don't understand, the T has a whole set of abandoned tunnels in several locations. And Broadway Station happens to be one which are huge underground tunnels, abandoned tunnels, where it used to be homeless, people would live there, other people would live there. What the T has done now is it's actually a training facility. We have a large training facility under Broadway Station where they train all different agencies on how to on terrorist attacks, or how to active shooter events and everything else. They have actually trains that are set up there. They have green line trolleys. We have buses in there, and they've trained everybody. They even trained the Vermont National Guard, which I don't know if when Bernie Sanders gets some subway somewhere, they might be able to use it. But they did train, they've trained the FBI and everybody else in it. So, the T has done everything from biological to chemical to, active shooter training. The T's done a great job at that. Haven't done too good of a job getting trained from point A to point B, but when it comes to certain crime prevention things, the T has done a really good job.
So this book, the first, Code Code Black, from beginning to starting to writing it to publication? How long did that take you?
Oh,
about?
this took a couple of years for us
I
to
would
do.
think
We
so.
would-
I mean-
The book it's a long book. It's about 500 pages, which is probably you could probably read it by the time a train could get you from Ashmont to Alewife with about 5 delays.
It's either a good read or you're insulting the.
No, it's a good read.
No, right.
And
But
I'm
one
not
of the
just
things
saying
when you
that.
talk about reading for people who use by the team, one of the things I've always been good at is people watching, and you know, with the current climate and where sexual assaults and groping against females has come up, I used to watch. And when I'd ride the trains, or when I would ride the trains in plain clothes, or would have female decoys, it used to be that you see females on the trains. Everybody had a book in their hands, but they never turned the page. They weren't reading books. They just didn't want to be bothered on the train because the train does have a sizable amount of perverts riding the trains. That
More
was
than
one of
we'd
the
like
three
to
things
think, yeah.
Yeah.
that we, you know, when I write about the 3 Ps, back in the day, pickpockets was a major problem. There was actually a school called 12 Bells where you're trained to learn how to be a pickpocket. But pickpocket has gone out because actually it was a lot of work to become a really good pickpocket on the team. I mean, it's big in European countries and down in South America, but on the T, the pickpockets has basically died out.
Did you ever see that movie Harry in Your Pocket?
No, but I've seen several.
That was about pickpocketing.
Yeah,
It was.
you know, it's an art into
It is
itself.
the show. Yeah.
It's a subculture in itself, and one of the things I also talk about is it's the terrorist attack is actually lost by graffiti vandals, which is a whole different subculture that a lot of people don't understand how, you know. And I also one of my central parts of my book is about the pit in Harvard Square, where a lot of homeless kids used to, and I was always fascinated about the pit because it's a sunken amphitheater, if you're not familiar with it. But on either side, you know, you have Harvard on the basis of power, but these kids ruled the pit and the underground, for want of worth, for what it was. And my characters, one of the characters is actually based on a case we had out there, which was a civil rights case. I won't say the individual attacked a couple of young African American girls, and we were chasing him all over the place. We knew he got to Germany, and we finally got him back here. You know, this kid Richie Sullivan has actually ended up catching him, but his father was one of the most wealthy and powerful men in Boston. So that actually became the basis for one of my characters. The other characters in the book were I talk about a corrupt senator from South Boston and his brother who was a crime lord.
Yeah, I wonder who they are.
And I think if
I don't
you
think you have
base
to wonder.
you can base that on that. And I know that Ann and my wife had attended the Bulger trials. I don't know if she ever did.
Yeah, she alluded to a little bit to
Whitey
it.
had sent her a letter.
She
and,
let me read some of it,
yeah,
actually.
so she, you know, Whitey had the hots for my wife, and I always like to remind my wife that. Yes.
Now,
Yes.
if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that? Can they get you on Facebook, or would you be?
I don't do Facebook.
Okay.
I don't,
Are you open to
I don't
Smart man.
tweet.
email?
I don't tweet.
Oh, no,
I don't
it's-
email. I always gave this advice, and I think it's from Martin Lamasi. I just changed it. Never email. Don't use
Nothing in
Facebook.
writing, right? That's law enforcement good
peace in real
behavior.
life.
Wink. Never wink when you can nod. Never nod when you can speak. Never email. Never do this. And be careful.
So we just want everybody at home to buy a copy of the book. Now, maybe you'll start a book tour and you'll do the.
Yes, they can go on
Autographs for them.
Amazon, or they can go on Lulu or any of the Barnes & Noble. You can buy it there and stuff.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining
Yes, Bill,
us today. It was great having you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Fascinating road you've taken through life, it seems.
Well,
especially the job teaching the women how to do their exercises. Huh?
Quiet
Well,
now,
actually,
quiet.
you know, the proudest accomplishment of my career was meeting my wife at Broadway Station one day when we were working.
That
and
was
I
while
told
you
her
were at
that
work.
day I would marry her, and I did. And 32 years later, we're still somewhat happily married. I killed her off in chapter 1 for a reason, though.
Well, don't give away too much of the book
Yeah.
now. Everybody at home, go get a copy. Thanks again.
All right,
Thank
Bill,
you.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bill has really contributed and accomplished a lot in his career in both law enforcement and now as an author in his literature.
Yes, he has. You know, even I'm thinking of writing a book.
I don't even want to know.
Oh, come on.
Anyway, if you'd like to follow Bill, you can do so by buying his book called Code Black. You can get it on Amazon.com or on Lulu. Sorry, he just doesn't have an email or anything that you can follow him on or Facebook.
Well, too bad for Bill.
Yeah.
And now we would like to close out our show with a special appreciation of something very positive from our community. Anne?
Tonight, we are going to present the Massachusetts Environmental Police. We're going to talk in detail about the inland portion of it and how they coordinate with coastal and local law enforcement to handle a giant territory. Recently, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Lieutenant James Cullen, a wonderful, very seasoned environmental police officer with many years of experience. He was referred to me by Major Pat Moran, who is also an exceptionally seasoned leader in this agency. I spent a great deal of time obtaining information from Lieutenant Cullen in the areas of learning about the agency, how it works, and what it does. Over the next several episodes, we'll be breaking this agency down for the public and its citizens who may not be aware of its existence and how it combines its intelligence and resources with local law enforcement. Today, we present the Massachusetts Environmental Police Department. A lot of citizens are not aware that there is an environmental police agency that handles not only this area, but also surrounding areas.
This segment will not only make the public aware of this agency, but it is also meant to outline its capabilities and its jurisdictions.
In order for the public not to be confused on reasons to call this agency versus the calls that should go to local law enforcement, here's a brief outline of some that should be called directly to them.
Any complaints in regards to illegal hunting or fishing practices, either commercial or recreational.
Any complaints of boats and or watercraft being operated illegally or in a negligent manner.
Anyone who wishes to report illegal off-road vehicle operations or trespassing, such as illegal operation of dirt bikes, ATVs, or snowmobiles.
Anyone who needs to report a boat accident of any kind.
Anyone who needs to report an off-road vehicle, such as a dirt bike, an ATV, or snowmobile accident.
Anyone who wants to report a hunting accident.
Anyone who wants to report the illegal or suspect purchase, sale, trade of wildlife and/or wildlife parts.
Anyone who wants to report information about illegal use, disposal of hazardous, toxic materials.
Anyone wishing to report large animals, such as bear and moose conflicts.
Anyone wishing to report theft of a boat, motorboat, or off-road vehicle.
In addition, many times people will call to get clarification on regulations or laws or specific information on a particular geographic area. The dispatcher will then put them in contact with an officer from the area they have questions about, or will defer any questions they cannot answer to a field officer.
If you or anyone else wants to call and report any of those items we've mentioned, the number to call is 1-800-632-8075. Again, it's 1-800-632-8075.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode.
Good night, God bless, and have wonderful happenings in your lives.
Until next time, where planets collide and often collide, I'm Peter.
And I'm Ann.
Thank you for watching.
Baby.